taking a little bit of time today, it seems.
It happens. It's one of
Hi.
those days.
Welcome.
Hi.
Isn't that the way it goes, right? Welcome to the SG Child Show today. I'm so excited to have this conversation. And as you listeners know, I love to bring you the best guests and resources and ways that you can just help yourselves and help others that you love around you. So, without further ado, I am meeting with Dr. Anna Levy Warren. Hopefully, is it Levy?
It's a Levy Warren.
Okay.
Close enough. No problem.
Whichever is best. Tell me. But thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to learn more about you and your journey. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you here today, and we'll get started.
Sounds great. Absolutely. So, I've been a clinical psychologist who focused on complex learning needs and emotional obstacles to learning, focusing a lot on ADHD and executive functioning challenges for a very long time, over almost 20 years. But the truth is that I also have 3 kids, and I was sort of brought to my knees by my own kids' neurocomplexity. And, all the parenting advice I ever gave was thrown in my face by my children, teaching me how this really works and goes. So I've had to really, step back and integrate the new kinds of learning that can happen from just being in life with what it, just really neurodiversity and the challenges of this world. So, it's been a real learning curve, and I have felt very grateful and often very exhausted and overwhelmed by that learning.
Absolutely. Oh, my heaven, soul sister. We are in this together.
Yeah, there we go.
Conversation.
Yep.
Well, let's start from the beginning. When did this journey start for you, and what did that look like? What kind of was that eye-opening aha moment, or okay, here we go, hold on?
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing, so I actually, when I was doing this work, I really was focusing on those really complicated neuropsychological batteries where you do the IQ tests and the different ways of knowing people's brains. And one of the things I figured out is once you get those tests, what do you do? How do you implement the findings? It's oh, wow, you have this diagnostic picture. You have this much anxiety. All these things are coming together. How do we handle it? And we would say, good luck. I hope it all works out, like that. I'm glad you know all this. And when I started this work, it was going in and implementing the findings of those reports in really strategic ways, really thinking about how these challenges manifest in real life and what we can do. And that was exciting. And I loved doing that kind of work. What does it mean when someone has visual spatial processing problems? What does that actually feel like? How do we change what their, homework looks like, what a test looks like to help address those different challenges? And then when I had my own children, they really taught me that all the strategies, weren't just about this teaching, but about really being with emotionally and, kind of being in a constant sort of collaborative conversation about the experience that my kids were having and the pain of it and the worry of it and how some of the strategies needed to be shifted and changed to address their different needs. So I kind of came into it from this clinical neuropsychological side, and then really got the hands-on learning in my own home when I watched the challenges of doing things that seemed simple for everybody else, right? Like, oh, let's get out of the house. Okay, great. Thank you so much. My ADHD kid has a singular shoe and is, did not brush their teeth, nor did they remember any of the things required to get to school. But I really appreciate your thought that I should have managed that well. So that's sort of my story from both sides.
Oh my heaven. And I think that I love that you said that. And I love a word that you said that I'm going to just break into, and that was collaboration, because I don't think enough parents consider what that means, what it takes, and what can happen when you implement something like collaborating with your child. Where do you start? What does that even mean? What does it mean to you? Tell me what that looked like when you saw that was what was necessary for support movement success in your life.
Yeah, I mean, I so appreciate you asking that because, we all might have a theoretical belief in collaboration, right? That's a nice idea. But when you get into it, you need to get, I need to get to work. My kid needs to get to school. This is what we're doing and how we're doing it. And I had all of these, tricks and strategies for how we were going to do it well. I'm an executive functioning expert. Here's your visual checklist and here are the things. And I have lots of, people ask me all the times for tips and tools. And one of the things I realized is my tips and tools didn't tell me how my daughter's brain worked and what she needed. The only person that was going to tell me that was her. And I needed to listen better. And I needed to really, and my frustration would go up because I did all the things I was supposed to do. I made the checklist with the visual timers and I told her that this is the way it was going to be. And what she would come back to me over time when I listened better and became collaborative by inviting conversations about what was working and not working, even as early as 4, was she would say, I don't like I need color on my checklist, or I need more time. And I would feel frustrated. And then when I started to realize that I hadn't done all this planning with her, she wasn't bought into it. So it was just me telling her what to do. And I'm another person telling her what to do. And she doesn't want to listen because guess what? She's a resistant kid who has a lot of feelings about her own life and her own brain. And so she taught me so much about what she needed and what became a collaborative process around, we have a problem. Let's put the problem on the table. Yeah. We need to get out to school at this time. What do you need to make that possible? And some of the things sounded ridiculous, right? Well, I need a lollipop, well, I hear you, but can we actually say what you're saying is you actually need a reward for getting out the door? And instead of dismissing that, like, well, that should be just an expectation, that was the thing that she needed. And I had to think about what could that reward be? And that reward didn't have to be something that I imagined, like money or toys or candy. A reward was also playing a game with me. A reward was singing a silly song. And so that collaborative process allowed me to create tools and strategies that were actually implementing change with her and not just in the world.
And how much do we as adults, we want to be in those collaborative spaces. We want to be heard. We want to be listened to. Yet so many adults, parents turn around and they expect and don't listen and place expectations on kids to know these things and follow these rules, but never be a part of having set up those systems. And what do we want most in the world out of our children ultimately? Independence.
Yeah.
And what you're describing of your daughter is somebody who you are already respecting and dignifying this human experience that they need to be independent. They already are independent. It's what we offer them in boundaries of their independence that they can take advantage of or take for granted, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's on us to build those environments for them. But I couldn't agree more. When I came out of a time period of being a step parent and parenting from a totally different place to having this idea that, wow, I have a second chance with my own child 12 years later now to operate and put intentionally in this relationship that I want to see something fruitful come out of. I want to be friends with this person in 15, 25, 30 years. I want them to be friends with me. How do I set these relationships up? Well, just like you said, you invite them in. You be a part of them. When you invite them, they'll be more likely to invite you.
I absolutely agree. And I also think that there's this idea that we know better, right? And because we're older. And the bottom line is my daughter has taught me so much about what it means to be in relationship to somebody who has a brain that works differently than mine. And that no matter how much I have studied or learned or understand about neurocomplexity and the ways in which our cognition does this or that, I can never know more than she knows about her own brain and mind. And that has been a process of my own understanding and taking my ego out of it, right? Not only am I a parent, but I'm an expert. It's like, well, what does that expertise do when you have a tantruming child who's throwing something at you and you have nothing?
Yeah.
And I will never forget so early I think my daughter was 6 and she was having this screaming fight. And then when she sort of stopped and paused and we like got to the other side. And what I wanted to do was say, how could you throw this? And my daughter looked at me and she goes, Mommy, can we have a restart? And I was floored. I was like, no, what do you mean a restart? I am angry. You just did outrageous things and we will talk about it, and I am all in it. And she just said, I can't hear you now. And it was just this simple truth of, her brain, it's like she was ready. She heard me. She got it. It was a bad situation for her too. She was ready to move on. And I'm the one who's stuck. And that was not the time to go over what had happened. And it took me so long to recognize the absolute ridiculousness of me trying to take a kid who had finally calmed down and to process the intense emotional experience when she wasn't ready. So she taught me the art of the restart, right? Like sometimes you just say, you know what, can we just have a reset? That went terribly. I was hungry. I was tired. I was overwhelmed, right? And so there's this way that we really get stuck in our own narratives, our own systems, our own ways of being taught how we learn and don't. And then we can't be in these conversations that are so useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are we going to get out of those things? And I love that you said letting go of the ego, because that's literally where it exists. It exists in this form of we're older, we know better. Well, let's talk about respect. Respect doesn't come from being of age to do something. Respect isn't an aged process. Right. It's the process of me stepping back and realizing this human is having an experience that I might not be understanding. How else would we get information other than asking that human themselves? How is this situation or experiencing affecting you? What just happened and how can I better assist and support you in moving forward? I couldn't agree more. And sometimes we really have to, if we want to be intentional parents, if we want to have a relationship with these children that, let's face it, are going to be the change makers, the policy makers, the law holders, all of these things in the future. Like, what kind of tools are we giving them and what kind of access are we showing them they can have if we control every single narrative and every single situation and every single conversation and don't give them the chance or allow them to be a part of it?
Right. And it's also just a false narrative that we can have any control, right? Whenever we think we have the most control, then we lose all the control. And so the idea that we're going to anticipate something and make it go better because we've decided X, Y, or Z is just a false, story. And I really have so much empathy. And as I've spent so much time in my own head about all the ways that I should be doing better or all the ways that my kids should be doing better. And I think releasing myself from the responsibility and saying, I'm going to have to just sit with where we are and what we're doing in this way, it has changed everything for me. And something as silly as, parents are advised all the time, like, tell your kid to take a breath, like have them take a breath. I'm sorry. Have you ever tried to make someone take a breath? Like what a preposterous idea, right? So it's like someone telling you, like, you should meditate. Oh, okay, hold on. Like if you have to decide that you're going to meditate, but the actual thing to do is to say, I need a breath. The thing that I learned to do instead of saying to my kids, you need to take a breath, you need to take a minute, you should be in time out. It's like, I need a time out. I am angry. And then modeling that is actually the message that comes through versus when you're trying to make a kid do something. If you need a break, take a break. They're not going to take a break because you told them to take a break.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think changing that perspective has helped me enormously and actually been relieving because I can't trying to make teenagers do things. Good luck to you.
Good luck.
It's, right. And actually what you named so beautifully is if you are making them do things, what you're losing is actually the relationship.
Yeah.
Right. That if then what happens is then they get out of the house and either they fall apart or they hate you. And you haven't gotten any of the things that you've wanted. So I'm not saying kids rule and do whatever they want. Absolutely not. There are frameworks and there are things, but being in collaboration and thinking and talking with them about that is the crucial piece, as we were saying previously.
Yeah, it really is. And, a lot of us come from parents that we didn't have relationships with. Let's just be honest. Sometimes our learned experience was our own, and we replicate that in a form that we think is appropriate. And then we learn that, wait a second, like I have the chance here to do something differently, to change the communication style of my household to what it looked like when I was growing up. I have the opportunity to put different, boundaries in place where those types of behaviors won't be accepted, or they'll be taught that those aren't healthy for a family, and things like that. And I think that that was a really big win, if you will, for kind of my family's existence, in realizing we can do things differently now that we are in this new era. Like, we have a lot more support to be, I want to say friends, but I want to just be clear that I don't mean like hanging out and listening to the same music, but actually being friends in the way that your child will come to you and you can come to them in situations. I think there's something so healthy and beautiful about that. And I didn't have that. And I want to give what I never had. And I think that a lot of parents are doing that.
I totally agree. And I think, there is a misunderstanding around the word friends. Like, well, I'm in charge, or I need to take the reins. It's like, well, we do actually want to have a voice of real understanding, that we are older and we have different kinds of experiences, and we can absolutely understand that having routines and anticipating what's coming is an important part of parenting. But adding an element of, I want to also hear your feelings and hear your experience. That doesn't mean I listen to everything you say. Having a feeling doesn't mean all of a sudden you get what you want, right? Take the lollipop. Like, it's not about you get the lollipop because you said you wanted a lollipop. It's like, oh, you want a lollipop. Let's understand why you want the lollipop. It could still be no, but I'm hearing that you want the lollipop because there's a feeling that you want on the other side, and I can do something about that. And so that's where I feel like the conversation shifts to something productive and the feeling of someone on your team versus telling you what to do.
Exactly. And I love that you said about the modeling, because modeling is so, so important. And just as in taking a breath, because there was a time where, and my son is very, high support needs in his autistic experience. And just like you said, telling someone who doesn't really even have the cognizant experience to take a breath, do these things, just because I say these words, then you should just do them. But really in showing, and finally, after months and months, and this has been years, but months and months of showing, like every time something would happen or he would get upset, I would just start taking deep breaths. And then to finally go in one day and find him frustrated about his game, and I hear him kind of losing it, and then to see he's just in there taking deep breaths on his own. I was so proud of myself and of him at that moment, to realize this is what real modeling and real practice looks like. It took so long. It's not going to happen over one or two experiences that your kid's going to be like, yep, I got it. That's the thing I'm going to do. Like, these things, just like habits, take a long time to take, and take shape and form, but it is possible. And you have to be dedicated enough to just be stuck in there, right? And doing it. I want to kind of lead that into your organization, the founder of Organizational Tutors, as you has here, because in a sense, that modeling is exactly what a tutor you would hope and would expect would be doing, kind of in that same breath. So talk to us about that and how that kind of took shape.
Sure. I mean, partially what happened was, as I said, the implementation of the findings of a neuropsych report, became overwhelming. And I started to, at first it was just me. And then it was like people I knew who also had this background of really understanding neurocognitive processes. And, it's like academic, developmental, on top of emotional, how do we help kids who are on the spectrum, who have ADHD, who are struggling with all kinds of different either diagnostic pictures or just even emotional struggles with learning, and take, what is considered to be standard practice in educating and realize not everybody learns that way, and how do we adjust and work with them to make changes so that they can be the brilliant kids that they are without feeling badly about themselves. So I talk a lot about building an academic self, because so early when there are kids who have dyslexia or, have weaker executive function, so the processes of school are harder, we start to say like, Sally, don't put your backpack there. What are you doing? Right? We get a lot of negative feedback so early. And kids feel terribly about themselves, and then they don't want to go to school. Then they don't like school. Versus saying, hey, it seems like you're really challenged. You're having a really hard time. That's a real challenge for you to get your backpack and your water bottle and your, shoes in the right place in the classroom. Or when everyone else is writing their name, that's really rough. What are we going to do to change those systems, and how do we support those at home? So this organization was really born out of that space, and trying to think about how we come up with really creative ways. If that's, singing your homework, if it's, trying to make a map that's physical visual mapping, or, it's helping kids really have, if it's an acronym, whatever it is, that we want to find what works for your brain that is strength-based, instead of saying you're not doing these things well. Yeah. And to also understand, and I think this is so important, that developmental milestones are normed, right? Like this is what we're supposed to do in a bell curve. And if you have any kid with any kind of neurocomplexity, those developmental norms don't work. And so to tell, my daughter is a 40-year-old poet, but a 3-year-old when she's hungry and tired and trying to get out the door. And so I have to hold space for like her gorgeous brilliance while really grappling with her limits, without telling her like, act your age, because that actually developmentally is her age. And as adults, we feel that way too. I mean, when I get hungry and tired, I'm a little bit closer to a 14-year-old boy than I am, my adult self. And I want somebody to be empathic and get me a sandwich, not stare at me and be like, act your age, okay. So I think it's really about the tutoring came at a place of really understanding that the relationship is at the center of what's needed, understanding developmental age and the ways that we help kids develop a positive academic self and feel good and understand their own brains. So the metacognitive part, being like, I know what I need, is actually the beautiful outcome. And going back to our, conversation earlier, listening to them when they tell you what they need, right? So that is that same full circle. It's like the tutoring relationships became the place where they did that kind of collaborative learning and changed the process and approach to school so that it worked for them.
Yeah. And let's just say, let's be real. The world today, it is different than we ever experienced. If we don't ask questions to the people who are living literally this experience every single day, unlike ourselves who did not go through this experience, maybe you might be a little bit younger than me in that process, but it's so important. How can I advise? How can I be this knower of what you should do next if I don't even understand the system that you are on, the constant images or audio or whatever that's coming in for you? How can I even be someone who can create a conversation if I'm myself not trying to understand those things as well, or at least understanding what those things mean as a whole? And I mean, you don't have to have an Instagram account to understand what Instagram is. You don't have to post 50 videos a day as a 50-year-old woman to understand and know what it looks like and how it could affect your teenage daughter. Like, you just need to learn about it. And those are so important because it's so different today than it ever was before. And I think it's so imperative that we recognize and stay kind of on top of those things and not let our ideas of what like kind of how we grew up be what we place over our kids' experiences.
Absolutely.
That wasn't so too much word there.
No, I absolutely agree. It's, my kids teach me more about the ways that, social media works than I teach them. I mean, that's not the way and at the end of the day, we really have to, the most important thing we can understand is that the world is constantly changing, and we need to be getting feedback from the people who are in it at the stage that they're in. So we want to be in that feedback loop all the time. And I think that to me, the most important part is also so much of what we learn and know is relational, right? It's in relationship too. And so while I value independence, of course, meaning that you can make your own choices and have the life that you want to live, I also really deeply believe about change in relationship, and that you do that in loving, connected relationships with people who you trust and who trust you, and that is the process with which we make the most change.
I love that. Let's give our listeners maybe 1 to 3 active, actionable steps that they can start if they don't already have a relationship set up and they want to build a closer relationship with their child. Give us some steps they can take today to just move that forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think one little simple one, and I'll do the intersection of sort of executive functionings, like the sort of automaticity and routine building stuff with the intersection of like the relationship building, because that's sort of my heart is right there. And I actually really believe in a family calendar as a tool that is both a relationship builder and a real like systems understanding of where we are in the world and what we need, because it helps kids anticipate what's coming. And it helps build a strength of connection, and it helps reflection. So a once a week family calendar meeting where you get one of those calendars that's on the wall and you say like, this is what's coming up this week, or tell me what's coming up this week and I'll put it on the calendar, so that there's a sharing of your world. So for, there, and all different ages have different parts of that. Is it grandma's birthday? Is it a friend's birthday party? Is it a test? But then you have a visual representation of what's coming up, and to ask about it, and a weekly way that you're looking together at what went well and what didn't go well, and how we can be in the week together, both in a concrete way and an emotional way. And I think it's a practice that we want to keep up, of understanding that knowing what your day-to-day is like and knowing what's important to you is a way of building a relationship, and holding you in mind means being with you in that experience. Does that make sense?
So beautiful. And here I was, I'm like, yep, got the family calendar, but I do not do it like that. And now I'm going to do it like that, because before it was just this thing that, here's the day, we'll do these things. Maybe we won't. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. But it's nothing like collaborative, like you're talking about. Nothing that is weekly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So wonderful. Oh, I love this. I'm definitely implementing this. So I can't wait to hear more. Where can people go to learn more about how your services help and kind of what that looks like? Where do they start, and where do you take them? What do you offer?
Yeah. So I mean, organizationaltutors.com, a dear friend of mine named that, before websites were a thing. And I knew what she just got that domain name for me. Thank you. It's really, really on the nose, right? Because it's about coming up with, strengthening executive functions, and about the approach and process to learning and overcoming emotional obstacles. And that has all of the, access points, contact. And I'm really helping people. Oh, thank you. What we're really trying to do is sometimes parenting is hard enough, and having a relationship with somebody who is not in the family system and is reflecting back sort of what's necessary and what could be helpful in a week, and giving new strategies and approaches and holding the whole system in mind is really useful. And we work with any kind of neurocomplexity, any sort of emotional obstacle to learning, and all ages, and really just try to sit with a completely customized plan around what we can do to help build this positive academic self, understand your own mind, and really change your feeling about learning, and also the results of learning, right? So in silly little things, I started with a visual spatial example, and I'll do another one. For people who have visual spatial challenges, or some, the executive functioning issues that we're sometimes touching upon in all of these different diagnostic pictures, doing something as silly as blowing up something to 200%, or using color changes the whole world of what is seen and not seen, right? And we don't think about it enough. And so this kind of, when people have these kinds of problems, we think together with what can we do to make these changes? And we think about the relationship that they're building with the tutor to make that happen. So it's each sort of intake call is very specialized around who you are, what your kids need, what we can do to help, and who's going to do it because of not just their expertise, but their personality. Right. And that's so important. As we know, if you have a passion, you want to be with someone who understands you and has that passion. If you want to sing your homework, we want someone who wants to sing your homework with you.
Yes, I love that. And are you offering it in person, online, both?
Both. Yep.
Figured.
Yeah. And I think that's the other thing. I don't think doing it in someone's office is ever that helpful, right? Like I'm a psychologist. I'd love for someone to come to my office. It's very lovely, but it's a non-transferable skill. Also, we really come in home or sort of on Zoom has been newer since the pandemic, but it definitely offers more opportunities for reach, and both are really effective for getting that kind of support.
Yeah.
And I use it for my own kids. I will tell you that. I for my own kids. So I really learned on the parenting side what this was like and how helpful it was to not be in the day-to-day homework with my kids in the same way.
Wow, that's fantastic. I think that, and like you said at the beginning, what better way to learn? What better way to learn than to be the follower of your children's? I think we're the biggest. Yeah, it's kind of funny how that works out, how our lives transpire that way, that we become the parent, have the children to become the student of learning from our children. But I think that there's no better way. And I love that you bring all of the experience, because I'm a firm believer that the real life experiences, there's nothing more that can teach you the hard ways and really down deep too. You can't get away from that. But there's a lot to be learned also in learning, in text, reading about the experiences and listening to the experiences. So I think that there's definitely a space for all of that. Thank you so much for your time today.
Of course. Thank you.
Wonderful conversation. I feel so connected to you, and I understand how our lives can be so overwhelmed with these, tasks. And you had said something about, the parent sometimes really feels bad that we haven't, we listen to these things and we say, oh, we beat ourselves up. We should have done this. And we should have done this better. And we can always have a restart. We can always start over.
The art of the restart. Reset.
We love it. Love it. So thank you so, so much for being here. And I really look forward to staying in touch with you. Tell us where you're at on social media.
Organizational Tutors is, on the lovely Instagram, and you can find us on there. And, it is not my expertise, but I thankfully have some people who really help me, get out there. Yeah. And other than that, it's really the website will guide you to all the different places.
Perfect. Thank you so, so much. Again, the website for everyone is organizationaltutors.com. For those of you listening, please go and follow Organizational Tutors on Instagram. Go to the website, see how you can get support, how you can be support, and always remember to just, go into parenting with your full heart, because these people, like I said, they're going to be the policy lawmakers and the people who will bring love and kindness into the future if that's what we teach them. So please do that. So great to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Nice to meet you.
I look forward to staying in touch.
You too. Bye.